Mr. Speaker, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Good to be with you.
And I want to talk to you first about what's being called the Buffett tax. The president today saying there needs to be a new minimum tax rate for people making $1 million a year or more. Can you get behind that?
I don't think I would describe class warfare as leadership. America has a spending problem. The government continues to spend more money than what we have, and I don't believe it makes any sense to tax the very people that we expect to invest in our economy, help grow our economy, and to create jobs in America. If I were giving the president advice, my advice would be let's tackle the spending problem, let's get our economy going, get more people back to work, more people on the tax rolls, and then if we need more revenue, all right, we'll take a look at where we can get it then.
The president says that he'll veto any plan without a shared responsibility. Can you guys come together somewhere? Is there any common ground?
Well, I do think that there are areas for common ground. I'm pretty sure that you'll see us move the free trade agreements. If the White House will send them to the Hill, I think the Congress is ready to pass them. I think when it comes to infrastructure, there may be some common ground in terms of helping to rebuild America's infrastructure that's badly in need of help.
Is an infrastructure bank, though, the right way to go about this?
I think that that's asking for trouble. And giving the administration walking around cash in terms of building projects is not my idea of what Congress's responsibility is. And I believe that we've got to find a revenue source, that we've got to get the money out to the states, and let them make good decisions about the needs in their specific states.
I want to get back to deficit cutting for just a second. The president says he's meeting Congress halfway with $3 trillion in cuts, half of that from tax cuts, half from tax expenditures.
Now, do you really think it's fair to take $1 trillion and less spending on wars and claim it as your own? You know, as we went through these conversations, we all knew that we were going to spend less in the wars in Iraq and the wars in Afghanistan. But nobody really felt like we ought to be taking credit for what was already going to happen. I think what you're going to see today is a pretty vivid example of why the president and I were unable to come to an agreement on the big deal. Because the president would never say yes to real cuts, real changes in our entitlement programs to strengthen them so that they're there for the tens of millions of Americans who count on them.
But now Congress has to be in the position of possibly making those cuts to Medicare and Medicaid, championing them, championing not getting behind the Buffett tax. Have you been outmaneuvered here, cornered?
Oh, I don't believe so. The president has made a lot of ideas and put a lot of ideas out there over the last couple of weeks. Again, some of them have merit. But when you begin to look at some of these tax increases the president has talked about, members from both political parties have rejected them. And I think that the Congress will do our work in terms of reducing the debt and reducing the deficit. It's our job to do, and I believe on a bipartisan basis we'll do it.
Is the president's plan a non-starter?
I think there are elements of the president's plan where we can find some common ground.
Let's talk about jobs. 14 million Americans looking for work. Very difficult situation. You talked about it last week in a speech. We've got a 4% unemployment back at the beginning of the Bush administration. Is that the new normal?
Well, I don't know what the new normal is, but America's job creators are essentially on strike. They look at all of these regulations coming out of Washington, whether it be about Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, the EPA, the number of agencies is exponential, and all of these regulations are coming at job creators, causing them to be scared to death as to what new rule or regulation am I going to have to deal with. Secondly, they have no idea what the tax code is going to be a year from now because we've only extended the current tax rates through the end of next year. They don't know what the rules are going to be. And so I think it's important, if we want America's job creators to do what they do best, we need to get government out of the way. Because today, government, I think, is the biggest problem they're facing.
Did you learn anything today, talking to the folks at these companies, about what needs to be done next?
Well, what you can see here, innovation is at work. American entrepreneurs will innovate. They'll create jobs. They'll come up with new ideas. problem is that government regulations tend to stifle this type of innovation, this activity here in the United States. And it's pretty clear here what needs to happen. We need to get the government out of the way. We need to get the corporate tax rate down and let American innovators and entrepreneurs do what they do best, create jobs.
You mentioned cutting corporate taxes. How else should the tax code be changed? What loopholes should be closed?
Well, we don't want to pick winners and losers, except that we do believe that the target for a flatter, fairer tax ought to be about 25% on the corporate side and the top rate on the personal side at 25% as well. And regardless of what kind of business entity you're running, all business income taxes ought to be the same, regardless if you're a C corporation, S corporation, or a partnership. And so bringing those rates down, the only way you're going to do that is to eliminate a lot of the special provisions in the tax code, some of the deductions, in order to bring the rate down so that it's fair for all companies in America.
I want to talk to you about Solyndra. This story has gotten a lot of attention. It's sort of shocking to a lot of people. Should we be gambling taxpayer money on green energy companies?
Well, what the federal government should not do is be in the business of picking winners and losers. There's a lot of new ideas about the energy of the future. And there are provisions in the tax code that allow for extra credits for research and development. But for the federal government to be out there picking one company over another, or one type of energy source over another, I think is wrong. And I think you're going to see the extra credits for ethanol, as an example, are going to expire at the end of this year. Because a lot of people in other industries, other forms of energy, think that this is an unfair advantage. I think that new energy sources are going to have to stand on their own. I'm all for green energy. I think it is the wave of the future. But I think what's happened here is that the federal government's gone beyond the traditional role of fostering more research and development, and they've actually picked companies in which to invest major sums of money, and it looks like we're about to lose major sums of money.
About $500 million, in fact. And there's another $10 billion about to go out the door. Should that program be stopped because of Solyndra's failure?
I think the members of the Energy and Commerce Committee, led by the chairman, Fred Upton, are taking a very close look at this and working with the administration to determine whether any more of these loan guarantees are appropriate.
I think there are 3 investigations into Solyndra right now. Should any of these reach into the White House? Big questions about a donor named George Kaiser visiting the White House right before the guarantees were made.
There's a lot of innuendo out there, a lot of rumor. And I do believe that the investigation by the Congress and the administration will get to the bottom of it. And the sooner we get to the bottom of it, the better off we'll all be.
Are you worried about a double-dip recession?
I am. I've been worried about our economy. It's been limping along, getting a little better. But when you look at the debt problems in Europe, it does pose a direct threat to us as well. The United States has a lot of exposure to European debt, and when you look at what's been happening in Greece, their inability to solve their spending problem, it ought to send a real signal to the American people that the best thing that we can do to help our economy right now is to get our debt under control. You know, this super committee that's charged with coming up with $1.5 trillion worth of deficit reduction is in fact a jobs committee. Because employers and investors around the country look at this gigantic debt that we have, and it's like a wet blanket being thrown over our economy. And if we were serious about dealing with our debt problem, I believe investors and employers in the United States would feel much more comfortable about reinvesting in their business.
The Treasury Secretary was in Europe and criticized mightily for telling European governments what to do. Have we lost standing in the world because of the way we've handled our debt?
Well, I don't think that we're still the safest bet in the world. We're still the safest place to invest in the world. But we won't be if we're not willing to tackle our spending problems. We've made promises to ourselves that our kids and grandkids can't afford. It's time for us to do what we know we have to do. And frankly, we know the issues that we've got to deal with. Let's go do it. I told the president, I've told him all year, Mr. President, forget about the next election. Let's just do the right thing for the country. We can do it together. But what we're seeing out of the president's so-called deficit reduction package is more of the same. It's class warfare, not serious about dealing with the real drivers of our debt. And that's the major entitlement programs. We have 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day. It's time for us to get serious about ensuring that these programs are going to be there for them.
Speaker Boehner, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.